Hey, Chicago, what do you say? It's the CHGO Cubs Podcast, normally at 1:20 Monday to Friday. But today, this offseason, we're here at 6 o'clock at night Central Time because the GM meetings are going on out in Arizona. We wanted to make sure all the information was up to date and ready, and we'd heard from everybody out there. Today was National League GM speaking out there, those of them that are not barfing. We'll get to that in a second. Cody Delmendo, Luke Stuckmeyer, Corey Friedman, and the man down in the bottom corner in the Hawaiian shirt, Ryan Herrera, out in Arizona.
Hello.
So we got lots to talk about. I saw that super agent Scott Boras talked, which is always entertaining, if not somewhat informative. We'll talk about first base solutions for the Cubs and what that means for Bellinger and some of his Cody Bellinger, maybe Pete Alonso, but a lot of Boras clients are involved in that whole thing. Maybe there's a surprise guy at first base, surprising to some of us. And we'll talk about the crazy people in Wisconsin who are still mad at Craig Counsell to a point that it's just absolutely absurd. But first, we want to check on Mr. Ryan Herrera. It's a good thing they didn't send Pukemeyer out there because it sounds like, allegedly, reportedly, 10% of the GMs and executives at the meetings here in Arizona have the old heave hose. Ryan, have you been able to stay off the toilet, and have you vomited yet?
No, well, first question, yes, I have been able to stay off the toilet. Second question,
Good.
No, I have not vomited yet.
Okay.
That was a surprise when I heard that. I don't know who in that 10% is feeling sick. Fortunately for, I guess, our jobs, Cubs executives have not been affected by it. So I'm gonna try to stay away from eating here at this resort. So it must have come from here. I don't know where, but I had to.
Well, that's the question. Is this, the GMs getting together and having a few too many cocktails, and what they're calling a hangover is now all of a sudden some sort of stomach virus, which we've all heard before in the days, or is this actually, there's something going around and you shouldn't be shaking hands with any of these guys because we don't want you being called Ryan Herrera if you were to vomit live on this podcast,
That would be awful. That would be terrible. They got enough nicknames for me. Like someone just said, I don't know where they started calling me Clark the Cub came from, but it's been going on for a while. I don't get it, but we don't need another nickname.
But Clark the Cub I've seen him. He's a large human being.
He's
like they're not like they're not even giving you like a short joke. Or he's not a human being, but he's a large mascot.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
he doesn't even wear pants.
Like the only thing that you can say about him is he doesn't wear pants. If anything, I ain't endorsing it, but like
if anything, you're
with the bit or with the chat and how they react, you'd think they'd start calling me that since I'm always the one not wearing pants, allegedly. Allegedly. All right. But
all right. Good. It's good that Ryan is feeling okay so far. We hope that continues out there. So let's get to Boras first of all, because anytime Scott Boras talks at these events, it's like a major event. He starts talking to like 4 or 5 reporters, and then it's usually like this mass media swarm gets around him, and he just holds court. Like I don't know if I've ever been to a GM meetings or in other cases, winter meetings, where he hasn't shown up and just like stood in a parking lot, stood in a lobby, and just held court for like 2 hours. He'll talk about anybody that's his client. He's going to fix baseball by having the World Series at a neutral site. But today, Ryan, he made comments about Cody Bellinger, which shouldn't be surprising. But the first one definitely applies to the Cubs and makes you a little nervous if you're one of the Cubs fans that thinks Cody Bellinger absolutely needs to be back on the north side. He said, you have a lot of options for him. When he went to Chicago, he feasted on major league pitching. Chicago got the comforts of full belly, so the Cubs are going to have to loosen their belts to keep Bellinger. Okay. All right. First of all, I understand what he's saying is true. Like I'm not disagreeing with what he's saying, but he's sort of making it sound like Bellinger did them a favor. How about the Cubs gave him a massive 1-year contract to go ahead and get to the point that he's at today? Like, isn't this a two-way street? Shouldn't the Cubs just answer that way? Like, yeah, he had a great season. It benefited us, but we also gave him like millions of reasons why it would work.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Scott Boras' job is to make his clients look good over the team, right? Like his job is to get his clients more money and make them, pitch them to teams. So I'm not surprised that he would give such a nice description of what Cody Bellinger did in the Cubs uniform this season. I mean, it's not untrue, right? Like you said, it's not untrue. Like Cody Bellinger had a great season. Was it the Cubs got something in a full belly or whatever?
Yeah,
I can't remember the line specifically.
The benefits of full belly.
Yeah, of a full belly. There you go. Right. So they're gonna have to loosen their belts if they want to keep him. It's not untrue, right? Like the market's gonna be compared to what it was last year. Obviously, the market's gonna be a lot bigger, and there's gonna be more teams wanting to get into that market. I think we've seen a wide range of what that money range, what that might look like. We saw some. I can't remember what it was yesterday, maybe, but it was like a super gigantic number that I don't see happening. But we don't know what's going to happen with Bellinger. But we do know that yes, the Cubs are going to have to loosen their belts, as Boras would put it, if they want to keep him around. Like he's going to get paid, maybe not what they want him to be paid, but he's going to get paid a good amount of money this season. The Cubs have to show they're willing to match that.
In the second quote, I think he was kind of trying to make it look like even more teams were interested. He's talking about when teams witness the fact that you have a 28-year-old player with Bellinger's ability, they'll go beyond what you think for interest. They're willing to remove players from their existing roster just to make room economically for someone with his ability. So he's basically saying there's a very broad market out there for him, and he is the, quote, young jewel at first base and the outfield market. Corey and Cody, does that worry you that he's sort of spraying to all fields, trying to draw up interest? Is this just an agent who likes to hear himself talk and none of this matters at all?
I mean, I won't speak for Cody, but I think, this is par for the course with Boras. That's why I think even casual fans that otherwise wouldn't know the name of any agents or front office people, a lot of them know who Scott Boras is, right? Because this is what he does. So I think for now it's a lot of talk. I think it was interesting. I think last week we all talked about some of the early, kind of contract speculation, which was a lot more conservative than stuff that has been coming out this week, right? I think I saw 10 years somewhere projected, which is
a lot
crazy. And I'll tell you, if Cody Bellinger's getting 10 years, it's not going to be from the Cubs. So so don't expect that. No, it doesn't worry me, because I think at this point, Jed, I believe they're going to have a big offseason and want to make this team better. But I think we just know that Jed is a guy who operates with limits. And if the market gets too crazy, he's going to bow out. And I think that's always been the case. And Boras is going to talk a big game, but we'll see ultimately what happens when they start having these meetings. So I'm not worried, because I think if it's reasonable, I think they'll bring him back. And if the market gets crazy, they're not going to, which I think is going to be the case for any of these free agents, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, I can't sit here and say that I'm not at least the slight bit annoyed or worried. And that's just, the overreactionary fan in me that tries to not overreact to these types of things. Like, when me and Corey did the podcast grading Bellinger, we kind of talked about how it's going to be a roller coaster with his free agency this winter. And I still think at this point, the only way he signs before New Year's Day is if a team like the Yankees or whoever comes in and offers like a 10-year, $300 million, 265, whatever it was, something insane. I think the only way he's going to be a Chicago Cub if he makes it through New Year's Day, still a free agent. And, I do think that there is a part that comes into play. Yes, money talks. Yes, Bellinger is going to probably go wherever the money takes him, but I do think he wants to play somewhere where he has a chance to win too. And I'm sorry, the Yankees don't have as good a chance to win next year, in my opinion, based off what we saw this year, based off, their farm system is not nearly as good as the Cubs. Sure, they can spend money on a bunch of guys that did it last year. Would it get them a 500 team? Like I don't feel like Bellinger feels like he can go to the Yankees and feel like he's going to go to the World Series next year or even be a playoff team. Sure, they're the Yankees. Sure, they have the history, all that stuff. But I just feel like, sure, money talks, but I do think at the end of the day as well, he does care about where he's going to play in terms of which team has the best chance to win. So I still think that he could be a Cub if he makes it through New Year's Day as a free agent still. And I genuinely feel like that there's a good possibility of that happening.
I mean, obviously on paper and after watching him last year, he's a perfect fit because you need somebody at first base. You might need somebody at center field. He's great defensively. He seems like a good clubhouse guy, all of those things. But you do have to worry that it was just a 1-year resurgence and it wasn't, something that he's going to be able to maintain the next few years. So we'll see. Ryan, what were the big storylines? What did the GM say? What were other people saying about Bellinger and or first base for the Cubs? Ryan is frozen in time, I believe, in Arizona.
He's kind of moving on my screen.
It's sort of moving. He's having a tough time. We'll see if he can get that.
Luke, I was just going to add on Bellinger specifically, like one of the things that Cody and I talked about last week, I think is, and what Boras is pitching, I think Boras is trying to create this vision that Cody is and can get back to kind of like that peak MVP form, which is closer to like a 7-win player. He was a 4-win player for the Cubs, right? And he changed his game. We've talked about that a lot in terms of cutting down the strikeouts, making more contact with 2 strikes. And I think one of the key things about his market is there a team willing to meet where Scott Boras wants and pay him like the MVP, right? And I think the Cubs are going to view him more as the person they just saw, right? Very good player, very valuable player, but not quite that player that is putting up 7 wins above replacement. And I think if a team believes that, that's where you start to see some of these crazier, 9-10 year projections, things like that. I'm like almost positive the Cubs don't view that as the right way to go.
Well, I mean, there are other options. I'm curious what's more important to him. I wonder when he sits down with Boras if he says, okay, winning is the most important thing to me. Lump sum cash is the most important thing to me. AAV is the most important thing. Like, what is he really looking for? Because I think if you say there's going to be a lot of teams there are going to be more teams, including the Cubs, that will be willing to go higher AAV, but a shorter term contract, in my opinion. They'd rather give this guy a bigger contract for 5 or 6 years. Like Corey said, there's no way they're going to touch a 10 to 12. Somebody said 12 years. I mean, no way the Cubs touch a deal like that. Do you think he would settle for and when I say settle, I mean, that's laughable, but do you think he'd settle for Dansby Swanson type contract this offseason? Is that a reasonable negotiating point from start here and go either way? Does that seem like a good middle ground? Does 177 something under 200, or do you think he's only going to take something over 200?
Can you hear me? My bad.
Oh, I got Ryan. Yeah, okay, we got you now.
All right. I was going to say, I think that's reasonable. I think he's going to be looking for something 200 or above, right? I think that's where they're going to start. It depends on how long the free agency or his free agency plays out, right? It depends how does another team swoop in and give him blow him away with a contract offer? That could happen, right? You never know. The longer it plays out and the less teams are willing to give him a lot more money, I think you will see it start to get back into the more reasonable contract range. Obviously, for me, it's too early to tell because off season just started. We haven't even like I said earlier, we've just heard a range of possible outcomes for Bellinger's contract. We have no idea what the real market looks like right now. And again, if someone is willing to overpay for him or give him a lot more money than other teams, they're going to get him. And so for him, I think it's just too early until we start seeing real concrete discussion or, results from discussions and seeing those come out.
I think he's also going to be a guy who, if he intends to wait, right, which seemed to be what the reports have been, his market's going to be affected by a lot of other players, which is true of everyone in a way, but I think uniquely Cody Bellinger, because look, like if the Cubs get the sense, like they did with Craig Counsell, that Shohei Otani is willing to come here if they get to the right number, right? Like, I don't know how much interest they're going to have in Cody Bellinger after that, right? Like, if Juan Soto is not available till the trade deadline, like some of the recent reports have suggested, well, that's one outfielder that's potentially off the block, right? If he is able to be moved, that affects things. So that's the danger of the game that, Cody Bellinger and Scott Boras seem to want to play, right? Is like letting this market play out, letting teams bid, things like that. But there's potentially several better players, right, and more proven players that are available. And I think for a lot of these teams, if they can make those moves, they would prefer them. But, obviously that has to shake out. But the sense is, Otani's market is going to shake out quicker, right? There's sort of like set timelines for this when he wants to meet with teams and kind of like ultimately make a decision. So there's risk in the way that, Cody and Scott Boras may be playing this as well.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cody.
I'm just reading the chat. The chat's just going crazy over like who it should be, like people for Bellinger, people against Bellinger, and I'm not coming off it. Bellinger's number one priority for me this offseason. You can agree or disagree. I don't really care. But I do think I agree with Corey that there's just a lot of talk when it comes to what Boras is doing right now. And I think that this is going to be a roller coaster. And right now, today was, I guess, a little bit of the start of the roller coaster. Like we're going up this hill. And the moment we hear that, oh, he's talking to the Yankees or whoever, that's when it starts to go down. And then hopefully there's another peak up or something like that. I will say it's interesting that this, like he says all this, and then the Cubs or Jed, whoever, I don't know, Ryan, you can correct me, whoever said it, but the fact that they said that they confirmed or said that Morell is going to play first base in winter ball, the timing of that is pretty interesting because is that like them saying, oh, we have someone who can play first or something, like, or is this them saying like them trying to gain some sort of leverage back? Like, I don't know. Personally, I hope not. I love Christopher Morell. I think he has a high upside, and I have plenty of tweets out there that say that, and I've said a ton on the show about how much I love him as a player and everything. But you cannot compare this guy to Cody Bellinger. I'm sorry. So,
well, number one, Bellinger's a left-handed bat, right? Like, I mean, Again, the left-handed bat that is great defensively and can give you Gold Glove play at first or in center. He is a rare diamond in baseball. There's no question that he's a sort of a unicorn for what the Cubs are looking for. But Ryan, as far as the Morell thing goes, you tell me how you feel about it first, because I've got some thoughts on Morell at first base.
I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing to be getting him some. I mean, from listening to Jed talk today, it wasn't like he's our new first baseman. He's done. It feels like he's going to play at different places, but in winter ball in the Dominican, they want him to get some work at first base. Like, look, we've seen him, outfield wasn't great for him playing the outfield in the major league level. It didn't go great for him. Third base, like if they believed in him at third base, he would have played a lot more at third base last year instead of Madrigal playing most of the season there. Maybe maybe some more work this offseason at third base could get him there, but we don't know. But his best position is probably second base. They have a Gold Glove second baseman there. They're not moving Nico off second base to give Morell a position where he, can play and has had at least a little bit of success at second base. So I think they're really trying to just finding a home for him is what Jed said. Finding a home for him is something they think that is really valuable, right? And it's something we've talked about where, he came up as this like super utility guy, right? Like he tried that for the last 2 years essentially, right? Or, his first year and then maybe half the year. It didn't work out. Now you got to find a spot for him. Maybe his best 2 spots are taken. What else can you do? You don't have a first baseman, right? Like if Morell can somehow figure out and play very well at first base, maybe you have your answer there. But for right now, I think it's more of just like they want to find a place for him. Where can they have him play? Where can they get him? They're going to have him get reps, right? They're not talking about having him play first base in the season. They're getting him reps there, or want to get him reps there at in the Dominican Winter League. So it's to me, it just comes down to they want to find a home for him. They don't know where it is yet because he hasn't made a home anywhere at any position in the major league. So that's it to me. I don't look at it as like they're trying to make him the permanent first baseman. They want to find somewhere.
That's totally it, Ryan. I agree. Like there's only 3 options for the guy. This is fact. If he's on the Chicago Cubs, there's only 3 options: third base, first base, DH. Period. That's it. So those are the only 3 options. I'm okay with DH if that's what it ends up being, but now you're going to wait and see if you get Otani. Otani would be your DH. Soto would be your DH. So you're not going to say right now today, hey, he's our DH for next season. That's the way it's going to be. So you can try to get him to improve like Nick Madrigal did at one of 2 positions, third base or first base. I don't love the first base idea because you just had 2 Gold Glove guys at second and short and made your infield like, glue or a vacuum just sucking up ground balls. I don't want them throwing the ball over to Christopher Morell at first base. That's just my opinion, even if he were to greatly improve. So in that way, I would rather see him get all the work at third base. But what this may indicate to me is, and we were talking about it in Slack earlier, that the fact that they're trying to find out first base, one of 2 things. One, they realize they need a backup plan if they can't get Bellinger to come back, if they can't get Alonso in a trade, if they can't sign Rhys Hoskins, if they go 0 for 3 in that group, they've got to at least have a backup plan, and they might as well let him try that. It also indicates to me, right or wrong, I think I'm right, that they think he can't play third base, that they've seen enough. And like Cody said, there were enough opportunities in the season over at third base and enough errors over at third base and a need for power that they could have said to him at any point, man, we're going to give you another week. But they look at the footwork and they look at all the other things that are going on at third base, and they're not even working him out there very much before games. So I think 2 things are true. I think, 1, they don't believe he can play third base no matter how much he works on it this offseason. And 2, they realize they got to have some kind of backup plan at first base. Am I crazy, Cody?
No, I don't think you're crazy. I wish I could be a fly on the wall inside the Cubs offices of them talking about why they don't think Christopher Morell can play third base. Is like if you manage to get Nick Madrigal to play third base as much as he did, I mean, again, the guy was a career second baseman before last season. If you can transform Nick Madrigal into a third baseman, then I just can't comprehend how you can't develop Christopher Morell into a third baseman. I'm never going to understand it. And it makes me a little irrationally angry because it's like the spot just wide open for him if they choose to not trade him. Is a spot wide open for him. I would rather if that was a place that we were confident that he could play third base, I wouldn't even be talking about a lot of these trade stuff, because at least what you have with the bat and the fact that he's controllable, 24 years old. If you could find if he was your everyday third baseman, the way that you developed him already, like I would be so much more on the side of not trading him to be at all. But like, because of this scenario, then it looks like the Cubs don't think he can play third base based off this report, the fact that he's going to play first base in winter ball, like it makes me a little irrationally angry because I just don't understand. I legitimately don't understand. And so, no, I don't think you're crazy. I just, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me. And that's where I'm at with it.
I just want to interject with that real quick. I think if you look at Morell and Madrigal on paper, like Morell seems to have the physical tools, right? Seems he would have the better physical tools, just being longer, taller, maybe a little more athletic,
bigger
arm. But I don't think it's all physical tools. I don't think it's all physical tools that go into something like that. Instincts play a part of it. They're different factors. So for a guy that, Madrigal, it shocked us that how well he played at third base, and after one offseason of learning the position, it's not all physical tools, and it's definitely not physical tools in one offseason. I think for Christopher Morell, maybe they had him play some there last offseason. Obviously, hope maybe they'll get him some more work at some point this winter there. But I just don't. Yes, I understand where you're coming from as far as like you look at him, and he should be able. He has the physical tools, right? But it's not all physical tools. To learn a new position.
The baseball IQ, the unmeasurable stuff, I get it. And I understand, like, I'm not at the Arizona complex or wherever they're doing this stuff with Nick Madrigal last offseason. Like, I can only go based off what we've seen and what they're telling us. So I just hope it doesn't bite them in the future. That's the thing. It's like, okay, if you do trade Morell, what happens if he goes to, the Padres? Great. You get, and it's part of a Juan Soto trade. And Juan Soto is great for the 1 year you have him. But then you're unable to re-sign him. And then over that time span, Christopher Morell learns how to play third base. And it's just like, how did again, this is all like potential like hindsight stuff that we could talk about. I'm just saying though, how bad would that be? How bad would that look?
Well, I mean, I think it's clear, especially reading the thing today, they're talking about Jed being open about him needing to find a position. And I think we can all assure everybody that they would love nothing more than to solve their third base vacancy with a 24-year-old, who still has years of control and isn't going to cost them very much. So they really, truly just do not believe he can do this. I know one in particular, I think his main issue at third was kind of the throwing angle and like keeping the throws anywhere close to online. And they just clearly don't believe it. I do think, Cody, you're not like totally off though. Like part of this discussion coming out today, right? Like they are talking to Cody Bellinger probably. Maybe they're looking at Pete Alonso. Like I don't think it's completely coincidental that Jed decided to put out in the media, like, we have a young 24-year-old with a bunch of power, and maybe he could just be our first baseman, right? Like, while Scott Boras is talking about what Cody Bellinger can do, and the Mets are maybe talking to Jed about Pete Alonso, stuff like that. Like, I don't think that that's completely by accident. To me, for a 24-year-old with that level of athleticism, it feels wasted at first base. But if they can solve it and get him somewhere, it's better than him just DHing. Right. But, at the same time, like, he hasn't really played first base, and first base is not – it sometimes looks like an easy position to learn because of the guys that get put there and stuff like that. But I think where I would have pause is, like, you spent a lot of money to build a now all-gold middle infield. It's been a big priority of yours, like – I don't know, if you don't believe the guy can play these other positions, like, it's not always that easy to just go over to first base and make sure you're in the right position on all those, PFP style plays with pitchers coming off the mound, the footwork, all that. It's its own position to learn. So we'll see if he can do it. We'll see if this is just a smokescreen. But Jed is right. Getting him a position somewhere is more valuable than him DHing. But I remain puzzled as to why he never really got that, like, you are playing third base every day in Iowa in, spring training, and you're figuring this out, right? Because, like, by the look of it, you think he could, but they really, truly don't believe that, apparently.
I recognize that what I said about, everything that we could look back at in hindsight. I understand that is, completely irrational of me to just say that right now in this moment, day 3 of off season. I understand that.
Credit to you.
Credit to me, big of me to admit that. All right. But I'm just saying, like, that is the potential. If this whole thing with Morell doesn't work out. And so I guess at the end of the day, I just want them to find a position for him to play. If you're going to keep him, you got to find a position for him to play. And I just don't want it to go wasted, like Corey said. I do not want it to go wasted.
I think when you're looking, like, the scenario you're laying out with that is also like, how do the Dodgers feel that the Cubs were able to unlock something that they weren't with Cody Bellinger, right? Like, it happens all the time. Guys go to different places, hear new voices, new instructors, whatever it is. Like, it's not like Morell is going to be the first guy to ever, learn a new position and make it that it's the other team or do something that his previous team couldn't unlock for him. Like, it's happened. It happens all the time. So even if that is the case, it's also probably there's a scenario where even if that's the case, the Cubs had already done that with someone else. They did it with Bellinger. They've gotten someone else, Julian Merriweather. They unlocked something with Julian Merriweather that the Blue Jays can never figure out. Like, it's going to happen again.
Right.
It will.
I agree. I know. I recognize that. It'll be a lot harder to swallow when it's a guy that you had that almost hit 30 bombs and is not even 25 years old yet. And with all these years of control, Julian Merriweather is 31-year-old and been in the league for like 5 years. All right, like this is potentially could be something that we all look back at, and we're talking like, some of these other things that we've talked about years down the line. So again, it's too early to say that that's going to happen. I recognize that. I acknowledge it. Big of me, credit to me. But I just don't want it. I don't want it to even come to that, at like close to that. So they need to if first base is where they think he can play, then
fine, work on it.
Then fine, work on it. Like, that's whatever. I don't understand. That's where I'm leaving it at. I don't understand.
All right, we're gonna let Ryan go. So Ryan, any other nuggets you want to tell us about what you're writing? You can read all of Ryan's stuff at allchgo.com. Make sure you sign up to be a member, because sometimes stuff is behind a paywall and we want to make sure you can read all of it. So Ryan, anything else you want to tell us before potentially you have to vomit in a couple hours?
No, I talking to Jed and a lot of the stuff we've already talked about and stuff that he, said at the end of the season, as far as, the bullpen and needing to do better at constructing the bullpen and having to take a look at that. And obviously, like, needing to figure out how to get some of the young guys, guys in the minor leagues or whoever, like, better development, get those guys to the major leagues to help out that bullpen. Also asked about Marcus Strowman and his opting out over the weekend. And Jed kind of said he was surprised in that he just didn't know for sure the conversations that they had. He just didn't know for sure which way that Marcus Strowman and his group were going to go. So when they did reach out to him to let him know the decision, it was a shock to him. I think we would say it was a shock to us at first. I think we had all operated under the assumption that Strowman was going to opt back in or take that last year. But for Jed, it was more like he was surprised just because he didn't know what way they wanted to go. And now, as Jed mentioned, that now, while it opens up some money, obviously $21 million, like Jed talked about, like, now he's a good pitcher. Marcus Stroman's a good pitcher. They have to figure out how to, as far as the starting pitching depth, now they have to figure out how to replace it. And maybe, Marcus Stroman wasn't the best pitcher in the second half, but he's still a quality arm that now they have to figure out, like, who do we have to go after? Do we have the depth in the system? How can we just kind of replace the production that Strowman gave and could have possibly given in this next year?
All right. Thanks, Ryan. We're going to see Ryan again tomorrow at noon. Tomorrow's podcast will be live at noon, by the way. And hopefully he doesn't get sick overnight, since 10% of the executives at the GM meetings are face down in the toilet or sitting on the toilet right now.
Stay
One
strong,
of the two.
Ryan.
We just hope Jed Hoyer's not one of them, that he's getting deals. He's laying the groundwork for the deals. He's not spending the night in the bathroom. That's what we're hoping for tonight. Ryan, we hope the best for you as well. Hey, guys, I want to tell you about Midtown Athletic Club. This is the nicest fitness facility I have ever been in. They have 4 Chicagoland locations, Palatine in the northwest suburbs out by me. They've got Bannockburn on the north shore, Willowbrook in the southwest suburbs. And then they've got Midtown Athletic Club and Hotel in the middle of Bucktown and Lincoln Park. And that place is, it's just spectacular. The place in Palatine, Midtown Palatine, just launched a multi-million-dollar transformation of the club, which will be complete in early of next year, 2024. So listeners, pay attention. You can lock in favorable rates right now if you plan to join before the end of the year. And then you get the benefits of this glorious renovation that's coming in 2024. Ultra premium brand here that we're talking about. It just reflects everything they do. First of all, they got classes and everything. You can go there and do boxing if you want to. You can go there and do yoga if you want to. Ryan likes to throw the plates around with Nicholas Moriano. The two of them like to go there and stand in front of the mirror and, pose and check their flexes in the mirrors a little bit. They've got club features, super luxury locker rooms, an amazing outdoor and indoor pool. They got hot tubs for lazy people like me, high intensity interval training. They've got yoga, boxing, cross training, spin and cycling. Really, it's the best place you can go to work out and you get some great deals. They have the best tennis courts too, connected to the USTA. So head over to midtown.com/CHGO to tour the Midtown Athletic Club nearest you. I'm going to get in on that whole Palatine deal, let me tell you. And you know what else I'm getting in on? Looking down right here thinking, man, I could get some new flooring in this basement, this fan cave down here. I could use some new flooring. And with Empire Today, you get to shop with home convenience, the right products for your needs, quick and professional installation, and a low price guarantee. Empire Today is the best place to get new flooring. So, of course, they're going to have some copycats, but they're not going to beat them on quality, service, speed, and the low quality products that other places do. So what Empire does is they take out all the junk. They are constantly digging through samples to make sure there's no junk that you can even pick from. So while you're going to the big box store and they've got nothing but junk there, some of the carpets just might fall apart on you. Not here. And they've got virtual floor designer too. It's a great way to see how the new floors will look in any space. All you have to do is snap a picture and instantly you can see how the new floors will look in your room. Shopping for floors at that big box store can be so frustrating because sometimes you're there and you're talking to a guy that was in plumbing and the day before that he was in the furnace section. Well, no. Flooring is all they do at Empire Today. They live and breathe flooring. They're so confident that they're honest and upfront as well. They also service their own warranties. You don't have to deal with manufacturers' phone numbers and that. If for some reason something goes wrong, they take care of it. Schedule a free home estimate today. Listeners receive a $350 discount when they use the promo code CHGO. Restrictions apply. See EmpireToday.com/CHGO for details. When Cody gets done dog sitting this dog that's been running around in his apartment there, who knows? He might wake up tomorrow morning and Fido may have torn into those hardwood floors and he's going to be like, how am I going to do this before my landlord realizes the hardwood floors have been destroyed? Cody, you call Empire, you get some of that really nice luxury vinyl flooring. The guy's not going to even know it's not wood. You put that in at a low cost with your $350 off. That's how you make up for that messy dog that you're sitting.
Yeah. Barb in the chat, she keeps asking if what it is, and it's a Jack Russell Terrier mix.
Yeah, his name is the dog.
His name is Milo for all the people who care.
Milo Hamilton? That was Barb's next comment. I guarantee she was thinking Milo Hamilton.
Is the dog on edibles? No,
Barb. Not drugging the dog. He's sitting as far as the
I did not go to Sunnyside to pick anything up for Milo, but yeah.
So okay, let's say Bellinger is Cody's number one option for that's your priority, right? Well, you've said that, and I don't disagree with it. I don't see how they can let a guy that's such a perfect fit at two positions that they lack get away, not to mention a left-handed bat who was willing to, with two strikes, slap the ball and get base hits instead of striking out like most guys that have that type of power. But let's say he slips away. Let's say the Dodgers want him back so badly that they give him $300 million and it's 10 years and then nobody's going to touch that. The Cubs can't touch it. He goes back to the Dodgers, or he goes, heaven forbid, to the Rangers, or he goes to the Yankees, wherever it might be. So what are the options? Yeah, we mentioned Morell. In a miracle, Morell figures out how to play first base. In the offseason, he becomes this gold glover. I don't find that totally likely. So the one that always gets brought up is Pete Alonso. Now, the thing that I didn't really realize about Pete Alonso is that he has recently signed up with Scott Boras. So obviously, Boras can't control the fact that his guy would like to be traded to the Cubs. As he's mentioned, he'd like, he's floating out there that he'd like to go to Chicago. He can't control where the guy gets traded, but he can control whether or not the guy signs an extension. So are you in or out on let's say Alonso gets traded for the right package. Okay. Mm-hmm. And again, that should depend on whether or not the guy's able to sign an extension. Assuming he's not going to sign an extension, are you still okay with the Pete Alonso option for prospects that will be valued? What if it's Christopher Morell and it's a 1-year rental on Pete Alonso? Are you good with that?
Personally, I'm not trading Christopher Morell for 1 year of Pete Alonso. I'm willing to trade Christopher Morell for Juan Soto, a 25-year-old generational talent. I'm not willing to trade him for Pete Alonso. But I do think the Cubs have a good enough farm system that they could move some guys for him. But I don't even, because he only has 1 year left, I don't think you're going to have to move any of your top tier guys either. It's like almost the same scenario with Pete Alonso. I just think that you don't need to move Morell to get a guy like Pete Alonso with the direction it seems like the Mets are going. Yeah, it's just kind of how I think. I mean, yeah, I would probably be pretty. At first reaction, I probably would not be happy about seeing Morell go for Pete Alonso. Now, if it's Juan Soto, fine, but not Pete Alonso. I think you have enough on the farm that you could be able to send to the Mets to get Pete Alonso. And I'm not saying that I don't want Pete Alonso. I just don't think you need to move Morell for him.
I think you do if somehow they could sign and trade him, like sign an extension and then trade him. But
sure, if that's the case,
sign up. He does. Boras guys don't do that.
Exactly.
Just likely, he doesn't sign up with Scott Boras because he thinks he's going to sign an extension. He signs up with Boras because he believes he's going to free agency. That's just my opinion. So, Corey, what do you think? Is Alonso option 1B for first base? If Bellinger is 1A, is he 1B? I believe that maybe a flyer in a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal for Rhys Hoskins, who's coming off an injury, wouldn't be a bad idea. Like, I think he's a guy that should be interesting too.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of this also depends. Like, I think even if you're looking at Cody Bellinger, like, I don't necessarily know that the Cubs are looking at him to be their first baseman, right? Like, obviously you intend PCA to take over in center field, but that is not happening on day one, right? They tried it as a very difficult assignment that he was given to start his MLB career, but I don't think, anything that we saw, even if he has a great spring training, like, he still needs some seasoning, and that's okay, right? But I think if you were getting Bellinger back, I think you would be looking at him to play some center field, right? Like, similar to kind of what we saw last year, except more PCA, less Mike Tauchman, probably, right? So I think that's part of it. This calculation. I'm with Cody. I think for 1 year of Alonso, I think you'd be able to put a package together that wouldn't necessarily require you to move Morell if you're not comfortable doing that. Just because I don't think he isn't. It's not that I don't think he is not Juan Soto. So I think if that's the price for Juan Soto, which we're not sure if it is, it isn't for Pete Alonso. But my thinking with these 1-year guys, even if they're not going to sign an extension, is something I said, I think a couple weeks ago with Brendan, like, that's on the Cubs to act like the big market team that they are. And when you're a big market team like that, you have more of an ability, especially when you have the farm system replenished the way that they have. You can look at things we'll look at things now in the window of Craig Counsell, right? They signed him to a particular contract, so we can look at it in that, 5-year span or whatever it is. But if you trade for a guy, it's because he makes your 2024 team better. He gives you a chance to win a championship next year. How that relates to 2025, if you don't send him to an extension, that's a problem for Jed Hoyer in the 2024 offseason, right? But that is the benefit of having the money that they do and the resources that they do, is small market teams can't really make trades like this. If they're going to sell some of their future for 1 year, that's a tougher thing for them to do. The Cubs should be one of those teams that can make moves like this. And, we've seen teams do that before. Obviously, the Cubs have made trades at the trade deadline to go all in certain years versus others, right? So I'm not really scared off by the lack of extensions or things like that. The price isn't going to be as high because they're not under control for that long. And as far as long term, you put your big boy pants on and you deal with it, right? Whether that's getting those guys in house and treating them right and convincing them that they should sign here when they do hit free agency, which is sort of what we're dealing with now with Cody Bellinger. Yeah, I think that's what you do. Sorry, I'm reading Michael's comment here. Corey, you and Brendan said last Friday you trade for 1 year, but with you win the World Series, right? Yeah, you so be it, right? You have to be aggressive for each individual year. You can't always control things, as far as building a 4 or 5 year core like that. Sometimes you got to be aggressive because these are the guys that are available, or give Cody what he wants, right? If you want stability and long-term stability, you have to pay up for it. You got to pay up one way or the other, but it doesn't concern me long-term because they should have the resources to spend over it. Pete Alonso comes here for a year and then re-signs with the Mets in 2 years. Fine. You go pay somebody else. You know what I mean? That's what you have to do.
I don't disagree with it. By the way, I do want to mention Rickta and in the chat and Barb think I hate Christopher Morell. That's totally opposite. Christopher Morell's actually one of my favorite players to watch on the Cubs. Christopher Morell hit a home run that is probably against the White Sox is probably my favorite Cubs highlight since they won the World Series. If I had to pick one thing that made me happy about the Cubs, it was probably sitting there next to the Sox guys, calling the home run and watching Morell walk it off against the Sox. I don't know if I've had more gratification since the 2016 World Series from the Cubs, and it was Morell's homer. I'm just saying he's an obvious name that comes up in trade stuff because they don't have a position that he can play other than we know he can be the DH. And I'm not against him being the DH if you don't have Otani, if you don't have Soto at DH next year. Right. Christopher Morell is a great choice for DH.
I think we have some things that we've learned, right? Luke, definitively, you hate Christopher Morell.
Thank you.
Ryan will defend anything that David Ross has ever done. I assume the same for Craig Counsell, right? These are just universal truths.
Yes,
of the CHGO
Cody got
Cubs
us
podcast.
Hosmer. Cody's to blame for bringing us Hosmer, I believe has been said.
Right.
I have no idea why, but yeah. Okay.
Barb legitimately thinks I have influence with Jed Hoyer. I say I want this, and then Jed does it. That's not true, because if that was true, this team wouldn't have gone through the rebuild the last 2.5 seasons. All right, there's Jed doesn't listen to me, but it's just the roller coaster.
I love the toe tap going around third, the whole thing. It's fun. I'm not saying he's not. He's just not a perfect player. Nobody on the Cubs is a perfect player.
I think
Cody, why do you keep hitting Ian Happ third? Huh?
Yeah, I think people in the chat just we're talking about trading Christopher Morell, so that means we want to trade him. It's I'm willing to trade Christopher Morell for better baseball players. That is true.
If I had to pick the most likely of somebody on the current Cubs team, the major league team, which player would be the most likely to be moved off that group? in a trade, I don't know how you wouldn't answer Morell, because he's going to be so attractive to another team at that age, and the slugging and all of that. And somebody always thinks they can find a position. So it's a catch-22. Do we have a super chat? Sarah said we had a super chat. I want to get to that before I forget. And then I want to tell you about my friends at Ray Chevrolet.
From Michael.
Super chat. Appreciate this podcast. $9.99 from Michael.
Michael.
Sarah, if you would have told me it was a $9.99 super chat, I would have had that thing. We would have shoved Ryan out the door and had the super chat on 5 minutes ago.
Absolutely.
That's spectacular.
Appreciate you, Michael.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Guys, I want to tell you, by the way, Black Friday savings time at Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake. As one of the top selling Chevy dealers in the Midwest, you're always able to shop one of Chicagoland's largest Chevy inventories. And all month long, you can save big at Ray Chevy during their Black Friday sales event, where you can choose from over 100 Silverados in stock, the perfect tailgate vehicle. But that's not all. Get 0% financing with $0 down and 0 payments until 2024. And I know everyone loves the word free, and that's why you'll get this month at Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake a free oil change. All you need to do is mention CHGO when scheduling your oil change. It's Black Friday offer that you don't want to miss. All you have to do is schedule it by November 30th and say Stuckey sent you for the CHGO free oil change. Buy with confidence and the Ray Price Promise. I call it the RPP. It's the Ray Price Promise. It's a guarantee that the price you see online is the price you pay when you go into the dealership. Many other cases, dealers are trying to screw you over here. They price it and they say, oh, when you get into the dealership, are you a college grad, recent college grad? Are you active in the military? You look like you're in the military. Are you a farmer? Well, in most cases, the answer is no, and that's when the other dealers try to raise the price on you. Price online included limited rebates that you don't qualify for. Well, at Ray, that's not the case. The price you see online is the price you pay. No add-ons, no hidden fees ever. In fact, Ray's going to do everything possible to find additional savings for you, which may make the price lower than what you see online. Visit Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake or raychevrolet.com to get your Black Friday savings. Don't forget the free oil change. They've been serving the community since 1963. Find new roads. I met Ray just the other day at the studios. What a guy.
What a guy. Rick DeHouse, like you mentioned, man, like in the chat, he might need some Goose Island after the Cubs trade Christopher Morell. That's the first thing he's going to need. If the Cubs indeed trade
did I use
Christopher
that right?
Morell, yes, you did that correctly, well Stuck. Credit Morell to you.
Stuckey, Morell Stan.
He or she, I don't know if this is a he or a she, but Rick, you're going to need some Goose Island when the Cubs trade Christopher Morell for Juan Soto. That's at least based off your comments and your DMs to me. You might need some Goose Island. Let me tell you about it. It's the official beer of CHGO. It's Chicago's beer since 1988. Some of the beers that you might need or want to try whenever you're numbing that pain from when Christopher Morell traded is the Oktoberfest, the Beer Hug family, that tropical 9.9% one. That's a good one. I promise you that'd be the one that I would go for if Christopher Morell is traded and you're very sad about it. The 312 Wheat Ale, that was just a classic. And then, of course, my favorite, the Full Pocket Pilsner, which is great here in my apartment. It's great at the studio. It's great in beer bats. It's great on a patio. It's great on a rooftop. It's great with all my friends. It is my favorite one. So the tailgate tomorrow, Gary, keep asking in the chat, who's all going to tailgate tomorrow? I'll be at the tailgate. Big of me to tell you. Credit to me. Come to the tailgate, drink Goose Island with me and Gary and anyone else from CHGO. Grab Ultra Fresh. Must win game because of draft position for the Bears. Grab Ultra Fresh Brewery exclusive beers at Goose Island's original brew house on Clybourne Avenue in Lincoln Park, or from their tap room on Fulton Street in Westtown. Goose Island Beer Company, Chicago's beer.
I want to shout out, we had a comment from PD Pabs earlier in the chat, and he said, grade me from the chat, listen every day, but rarely comment. Not especially funny, but I always agree with Luke, which some would say is the most insight anyone could provide. We appreciate everybody being in the live chat, but always like to, if you're listening for the first time or hopping in the chat for a long time, let us know. Shout out PD Pabs. Appreciate that.
Yeah, appreciate
Vanilla
the
Chill
people.
says, listen, sign Otani, sign Turner to a 1-year deal. Shaw can take over after that. Morell to first base, get a pitcher. It's that easy, right? Well, I don't know.
I'm
Something
not
like
against
that's
that.
got to happen this offseason. I don't know what it's going to happen, but they've made one bold move. Don't stop there.
I admittedly, again, big of me to admit what I'm about to admit.
Right.
I keep forgetting about Matt Shaw. And the reason being is that I don't want the Chicago Cubs to go into next year relying on prospects to do something, right? It's not that I'm not high on them. It's not that I don't think that they can be good. This roster needs superstar talent, man.
Yeah.
That's where, like, that's what they need. That's why Richter House. That's why, yes, I would trade Christopher Morell for Juan Soto. Juan Soto is a generational talent, superstar player. Absolutely, right? They need someone like that, and that's why I'm also on the you need to bring Bellinger back. Number one priority. All right, Otani, a generational talent, superstar caliber player who won't pitch next year, but he will after that, most likely. And even if he doesn't, he still is the one of, if not the best hitters in the game. And you can't tell me that an athlete like him, I've seen him run the bases. You can't tell me if he can't pitch that you can't eventually find a way to work him into the field somehow.
Make him a first baseman.
Like there's no way. And when we get to that, I'll worry about it then. But for right now, going for 2024, this team needs superstar caliber players, man. You got a nice core, nice nucleus with Nico, Dansby, Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki. You can even throw in Morell in there, right? But like, if this team wants to get to that next step, to be a real championship contender, like National League championship contender at the very least, I want to say World Series, but there's got a lot has got to happen for them to get to those types of expectations for me. But to even get to postseason / NLCS, win a playoff series type expectations, they got to get creative. They got to be bold. I think, Corey, you said that a few times. Like, they got to do something like that. And the Craig Counsell signing or hire signals that they are going to do something like that. So that hire makes me excited about what we could see the rest of the offseason. But I don't know what they're going to do. But like the guys that we keep talking about, like the Cubs need to at least get one of them. At least get one of them, in my opinion. And then maybe you're able to make some other savvy moves, maybe a trade that we're not talking about that maybe makes us think that they can be at least a division winner, right? So
yeah,
that's my
deal. I think we're all on the same page there. And I was reading, and I know like people are gonna like roll their eyes at it, but like was reading the quote from Ron Coomer today, talking about how in the time that he's known Tom Ricketts, he has not seen him angrier than that last series in Milwaukee this past season when they, were officially eliminated from the playoffs. And I know people are going to roll their eyes at that. And there's 6 years of, podcast audio of me very clearly stating my position on this, the Ricketts and this team spending money, right? So please. Yeah. But I bring that up because I think it pairs well with Cody's comment. Like, there's stuff that this team needs to do to get past that point, right? Like the reason that it all came down to that and the reason you were, fighting for a wild card spot in the low 80s of the win total is because there's a lot of reasons, but one of them is like you did not push in aggressively enough. You didn't shore up all the holes on your roster, and they definitely, I think, got better with their manager, obviously, right? I think they just got the best in the game. But as far as the roster, like you're right on, Cody, like you need more superstar power. You need more stability in your bullpen. And the way to do that is going to be making trades or spending money. And it's always nice when you have those young players who can step up and take those roles. But we, as far as the offense is concerned, we didn't see that develop at the end of the year, right? Again, I'm a big believer in PCA, but you don't have that answer on him right this second. That he is a star at the major league level. That's not what he showed you. And again, it's okay, right? I'm a big believer in him. But you didn't get to that point. So in terms of building the roster next year, you need to go and get people that you are sure of, right? And like that's why some of these guys keep coming up. It doesn't have to be Juan Soto. It doesn't have to be Pete Alonso, but these are potentially proven, really, really good to star level players that may be available to you. And at some point, like this is where Jed's ruthlessness that we've talked about a lot in the last few days comes in. Like one of Theo's, if you're going to point to things that Theo could have done better, right? And I'm the biggest, maybe Brendan, but like I'm the biggest Theo person out there. We have the same favorite band. He won a World Series for the Chicago Cubs. Like I love Theo Epstein, but he held on to some guys for too long, right? And kind of that belief of what they would turn into, right?
Theo's a big fan of Nickelback. I had
Luke. I'm going to leave this stream. I'm out of here.
My bad.
My favorite band is Pearl Jam. Please don't put on the record that I like.
My bad.
Incredible. But
what a moment.
You know, like you think about like Albert Almora, right? Held on to him for too long.
Yeah,
the belief that he would turn into the guy that they drafted, right? And I'm not saying that I don't believe in Matt Shaw or Owen Casey or all this, but you loaded up the farm system for a reason. You just paid a ton of money for a manager, right? 2024 is not some throwaway, like, we'll see what happens kind of year. Every year now that you are paying a manager more than anybody else in baseball history, right, on an annual basis is a precious time to win. And that means you have to make those moves to win. It does not mean that 2024 needs to be the be-all, end-all, right? And you mortgage every part of your future for 2024 specifically. But the window is open, and part of that window is 2024. And as we stand right now, the roster's not good enough. So you got to make some moves, and some of them, at the very least, need to be big time, like we are a major organization trying to win a World Series kind of moves.
Right. We're not going all gets. We're not saying I don't like this team. We're just saying it's got some holes and it needs some improvement this offseason. Before we go, again, Cody and I did this yesterday. We talked about the Milwaukee fans that are losing their minds over Council. I want to do it again. The more comments that come in, every day that goes by, you see something on the internet and you're just like, these poor people are so desperate with the Packers being bad finally that they're like, they got
down
nothing
bad.
else to do.
Luke, does Luke know what down bad means?
Yeah, they've realized that love is no good. And all of a sudden they're like, walleye season isn't really full force yet. There's no ice on the river. What are we going to do? And so Todd Rosiak, a reporter there that covers the Brewers, the reporters talked to Council in Milwaukee, and his reasoning for leaving was, besides obviously the $40 million, which Milwaukee was offering $5.5 million, not $8 million a year. And he said it was the proximity of Chicago to Milwaukee for his family and his desire for a new challenge. Well, the responses this guy got on his Twitter feed were absolutely comical. The first one was from let me see who. Sherm said he's ruined his reputation in Wisconsin forever. Like what? Because he took $40 million. And then Rusty, great that there's Rusty there, called him Craig Judas Council. But my favorite of all time, here we go. Seamus, I don't want to read this wrong. Seamus said, I expect that response from a manager at Applebee's who takes a job in the Chicago area Outback Steakhouse. So he's just described the two most popular restaurants in all of Wisconsin and tried to use it as some sort of
the Cubs are the Outback in this scenario?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I don't know why he's using the two best restaurants in Wisconsin as a dig, but for some reason that's what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
Can we acknowledge the tweet that surfaced Cubs Twitter yesterday as well from the account Milwaukee's Philliest Goose?
Yes.
It was like a thread, and it was like this guy who's like a Brewers fan but lives in Philly, and was saying that Brewers fans need to start acting like Philly fans.
Oh yeah, that was
and like I love our friends at PHLY, but that's the thing about Philadelphia that I don't like. But it's actually kind of like is this guy okay? Like, is he gonna be okay? Anyway, he starts a tweet with, in light of recent events, it's time for Brewers fans to unleash the nuclear option on Cubs fans. It's time for Milwaukee to become Midwestern Philadelphia. As Milwaukeean who lives in Philly, I've learned a lot from them. Here's how you can make Cubs fans hate being there. Show up in force to games for once. I just love how he acknowledges that
so
no one actually goes to their games when the Cubs come to town.
Number 2, build a statue of Rocky. What?
Number 2, never give Cubs fans a moment's peace. You see anyone wearing Cubs gear, boo them. I don't mean a meek little boo. I mean loud and constant. Be as obnoxious and as possible. Get everyone in your group to join in. 3, if they try to talk back, boo even louder and shift to chanting asshole over and over again. Don't ever let them get a word in edgewise. During the game, constantly give them shit. Start chants like fuck the Cubbies. And 5, if the Brewers win, turn it up to 11. Give them shit the entire way out of the stadium.
Did you guys ever
all
see
this time to send this tweet out, man? Like,
did you guys ever see the chant card that the Pirates made for the 2015 wild card game? That's the energy that has. It's crazier because it's basically just like we're going to be huge, you know, like D-bags to people we don't know for some reason, right? But it has those vibes for sure.
Yeah. It's just like I don't know, man.
It's weird. The other thing that I'm loving, because I also saw I'm blanking on, I think it might have been the Godfather Michael Collado who shared that Mad Dog Christopher Russo didn't like the decision. There is literally nothing, and I mean this sincerely. There is nothing that makes me feel more confident in something being good than Chris Russo thinking it's bad. Yeah. That man knows nothing. He does not know ball, to use a phrase that I've seen Cody use recently. He is one of the worst people on in like the history of the MLB Network. If he doesn't like Craig Counsell, I love Craig Counsell even more than I already did. But what I also think is funny, in addition to the fans freaking out, is those comments from like obviously other executives that are pissed they didn't get Craig Counsell, that are like, I don't understand what the Cubs are doing. That's crazy, blah, blah, blah. Those comments are either from one, like the Mets, who he chose not to go to, right? Or owners who are now pissed that managers are making more money, right? That's it. Anybody that watches this and analyzes the game knows how good Craig Counsell is. And so when you read those quotes, follow the money. Think of where that's coming from.
Yeah, Godfather makes a good point too about Chris Russo. Unless it's the Mets or the Yankees, everything is bad. Basically, basically what that's. I don't mean to come on here and say that this particular show or whatever is bad, but High Heat with him and Alana Rizzo, it needs canceled, bro. Like I can't watch it. Sometimes I'll just have it on as background noise just because I have MLB Network on. But man, they make me look like I'm super smart, and I know that I'm not right about it.
Hey, we're no slouches. Did you guys see? Big of us to wait till the end of the podcast to talk about it. Big of us, humble of us to wait to show the big news that today, if you were checking out Apple Podcasts for baseball in the United States of America, the good old USA, number 2 on the list.
Yep.
Ahead of John Boy. CHGO Chicago Cubs Podcast. How about that? Number 2, ahead of biggest
baseball media networks out there. That's big time. That's big time. Look at us. Credit to us.
Appreciate you, folks.
Appreciate everyone tuning in.
Thank you for anybody that's, by the way, listening to us in podcast form, especially on Apple and Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the CHGO Sports YouTube page. Cody's going to try and read the Foco ad for us with his new best friend, the Terrier.
Okay, hold on. I'll read the ad. I forgot that we had to read an ad, but Barb wanted to see the dog, so I'm letting her see the dog.
It's going to eat the microphone before he finishes this.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. Get fitted out in some of the best sports gear, guys. Just like Milo, I'm going to put him in a nice Cubs hoodie after this. Get fitted out with the best sports gear around. Hoodies, shoes, signs, bobbleheads, and everything in between. It's baseball season. Aloha shirts, straw hats, polos, bags, everything you need. For a game, get decorations. Foco has donated a few awesome pieces to our set in studio, the Wisniewski one. We got Clark the Cub. It's not Ryan. It actually is Clark the Cub. Go show them some love at foco.com or click the link in the description below for all non-presale items. Use promo code CHGO for 10% off.
All right. Thanks for checking out the CHGO podcast, Cubs podcast today, the Apple's #2 baseball podcast in the United States of America. Did I mention that? We hope and we wish our best to Ryan Herrera that he's able to avoid the Barfarama tonight out in Arizona, and that he's able to join us at noon on Thursday for the next live edition of the podcast. Of course, Corey and Brendan will have their podcast 120 coming up on Friday. Anything else I forgot? Did I mention we were #2 baseball podcast in the United States of America?
No.
On Apple Podcast. Did I mention we were #2? Mike Francesa, come on. How are we not #1?
I didn't even know Mike Francesa did a baseball podcast, to be honest with you.
All right. Anyways, Corey, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Thanks to everybody that stuck out here. And
tomorrow
sure
noon.
Subscribe to the CHGO Sports YouTube page.
Tomorrow at noon, correct?
Tomorrow
Barb?
at noon.
Yep.
You will be able to see live the #2 podcast of baseball podcasts in the United States of America right here live at noon. Until then, fly the W.
We all silly like the mayor.